This is bunny ears. You won't see bunny ears on its own, but you will see it in things like
One fairly serious issue with learning the Chinese written system is we've seen before how there are building blocks, visual building blocks, nameable visual building blocks, which is great, which allows you to learn a set of visual building blocks, which you could then use to visually break down characters or emojis, whatever you want to call them. However, there's actually quite a few visual building blocks that don't have any name, either in Chinese or English. And so cognitively, we don't really know how to deal with them. And how the Chinese do deal with them is they just essentially learn them like one unique piece of art. So you just memorize this 2D piece of line art, and that's it. And because you've 3,000 plus characters to learn, that's not a good proposition for non-Chinese learners who aren't immersed in the culture. So for example, this bit on the bottom, this building block here is big. It's person with a line through it means big. You can imagine a person with their arms out. And then we have this thing on top that is unnamed. Now, we have what looks like the king with these extra two little dashes on top. The problem is, if you have no name for that visual building block that's on top here, then what you can't do then is leverage that knowledge and apply it to see it here and here and here and here to rapidly break these down visually and pull them apart. Rather, you're just learning each like a unique piece of 2D line art because you won't generally see these in the same context. So your awareness of how many times this visual building block occurs, how common it is, how useful it is, and exactly what it appears in, and how to give it a name for yourself so you can cognitively lock it in. Now, it turns out we already have a visual building block that's very similar. It's the king, Wang. We've seen this guy already. This is our king building block, and we've seen it, how we can use it to analyze a load of characters. Why not develop the chassis of the king character to make a very memorable visual building block that we can then use to analyze those characters? And here we go. And that's why we've created this guy called Bunny Ears. It's essentially the king with bunny ears. And now that we have a name for bunny ears, which is pretty memorable from a Western perspective, we can use bunny ears to look across the set of Chinese characters, identify which characters it's in, how common they are, and therefore give a weight and a usefulness and a value to bunny ears as a visual building block. And we can also use it then to cognitively break down and cognitively remember, lock into memory the structure of those Chinese characters we're trying to analyze. And bunny ears is in all of these characters, and that's pretty much it. That's within these are all characters, Chinese characters you would expect to find bunny ears in. There are a few more, but they're not as frequently used. But for example,
American or beautiful.
American.
This emoji, this double meaning emoji that means either beautiful or American, depending on the context, it has bunny ears and it has big. Now, if we change big for woman,
ginger, the spice or the color.
Okay, here we have ginger, the spice or the color. So you can now perceive the difference, and you can leverage the cognitive memory of bunny ears here and here.
To cover. I'm on it.
Okay, to physically cover something. It also has bunny ears on top. Magnesium.
Magnesium.
Magnesium. Good for my bones.
Okay, a little bit more visually complex. It's essentially beautiful or American in here with this thing that means metal. This is a recurrent visual building block that means metal.
Cake.
Hot cakes.
And we have
envy.
I envy you.
So without knowledge of bunny ears, you essentially have to memorize each of these characters as a unique piece of 2D line art. And you can imagine the complexity of cake. If you can break cake down into bunny ears plus fire plus rice or grain, then all of a sudden it's very visually memorable. So that's essentially the power inherent in
This is bunny ears.
having a name for visual building blocks, and then you can look at Chinese characters and break them down, and whether that name is true to the etymology of Chinese, which, to be honest, is fairly unknown, or whether it's a fictional invention, that's fine, as long as you can visually break these down and be most efficient with your visual analysis and cognitive loading. That's why it's very important to have names for all the visual building blocks in Chinese, a finite set of visual building blocks and with names. It means that you're now highly aware of these distinctions in the visual building blocks. Find envy or die.
Envy.
Get the right pipe or die.